I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, but it has some interesting legal issues in it, and I'm going to summarize a 3-day trial and a verdict in this video and point out a few inconsistencies that I believe rendered the trial unfair. But before you scream, "What?" let me assure you I didn't mean unfair to Billy Delgado, the defendant. Hi, Tony DeWitt here. I'm a Missouri appellate attorney, retired, and I bring you a fresh perspective on the law without offering any legal advice. So pull up a chair. This is what we're discussing today. Domestic violence is an awful thing. It arises, in most cases, out of a disturbance in the balance of power between two people in a relationship. Every relationship or marriage has a balance of power. One party will have a little bit more power than the other. Sometimes it's economic power. Sometimes it's something you can't really nail down, like physical beauty or great personality. Very few relationships are relationships where the couple is at parity. Now, probably 60% of marriages, for the most part, couples work out their problems. They do what's called role negotiation. You handle the laundry, I'll handle the lawn, or something similar. Tasks that are essentially equal in terms of the amount of time and effort required to do them are usually shared. Now, that's not always the case, and in the situation where one of the spouses works and the other does not, there is a shift in that balance of power, and sometimes it's used against the person who doesn't work. The funny thing about having been in love only to have it fall apart is that it rips apart a lot of emotions. And for whatever reason, for a very short time, the limbic system, which handles emotion, takes over for the cerebral cortex, which usually handles logic and judgment. Decisions are made on the basis of emotion, and sometimes that emotion produces physical violence. Now, 30 years ago, I got divorced due to marital infidelity on the part of my then wife, and it it made me pretty upset. It made me a little crazy, but I didn't get so crazy that I ever thought about hurting anybody because, I'm an adult and I understand that sometimes people make mistakes. And at the bottom line was that it just wasn't working out. So we did the adult thing and put an end to that. That's what normal people do when the marriage isn't working out. And that's a good thing. But what happened in Billy Delgado's case was not a good thing. And that is primarily because they had a child and he decided to use the child against his now estranged wife, essentially to lure her into a trap. Billy Delgado and Erica Torres were married and had a child named Emmy. They shared custody of her, and neither one of the two were exactly angels. Erica was on probation, and there'd been some physical dust ups in the marriage, and Erica was a bit of a scrapper herself. In the end, it ended up with more than a dozen bullets being fired at Mrs. Torres. Her harrowing experience of being shot by her estranged husband, Billy, starts with her desire for a divorce. That was present even prior to the incident and solidified because Billy shot her, highlighting an already unhealthy relationship marked by arguments that would escalate and become physical, particularly when she tried to leave. Billy would often hurl insults and accuse her of infidelity. Prior to the shooting, which occurred later in June, on May 19th, 2024, which was Erica's birthday, Billy made a chilling comment when he said, "Enjoy your last birthday and enjoy your smiles and laugh because it's going to be your last." Now, Erica, as I mentioned, had not been a saint and was on probation, and she thought he was talking about violating her probation and sending her back to jail. This was a tactic that he frequently used against her. On the day of the shooting, June 1st, 2024, Erica received a call from Billy, who sounded very rushed, like urgency. He told her, "I can't do this anymore. You need to come get Emmy now. Don't ask any questions." And then he hung up. Fearing for her daughter's safety due to Billy's irrational tone, Erica called her cousin Kayla to stay on the line, hoping that Billy wouldn't fight with her if he knew that somebody else was listening. As Erica approached Billy's apartment complex, she saw him walking towards the vehicle. Everything happened so fast. She heard 3 bangs on my windshield as she was passing him, and then gunshot after gunshot after gunshot. Erica recalled seeing Billy's hand, demonstrating to the jury that he was shooting completely, no care in the world, no facial expression. The moment she realized she was shot was when she felt like she couldn't breathe, and a sensation like a rope being tied around my waist so tight. Looking down at her abdomen, she saw red on her dress and confirmed to her cousin what Billy had done. Immediately, she was in excruciating pain. She stopped her vehicle, observed an injury on her abdomen, and then drove off toward the hospital, terrified of dying and leaving her girls. However, she crashed her vehicle and had no recollection of the crash herself. Before we get into Erica's injuries, I want to point out that television and movies have done a very bad job of explaining what happens when you suffer a gunshot wound. On cop shows and TV dramas, the good guy gets shot in the shoulder, and he wears a sling for the rest of the episode, and the very next episode he's just fine. Well, that's not really the way things work. Erica's next memory was waking up in University Hospital in San Antonio in the last week of July, having no recollection of anything from June 1st to that point. She didn't know how many surgeries she had undergone, but later found out it had been possibly as many as 30, because her injuries were severe, including an ileostomy, which is essentially where they put a colostomy bag on you, and puncture holes from drainage tubes. And she also sustained a double compound fracture on her right foot from the crash after being shot. Due to extensive surgeries, she now has no abdominal muscle, and she has to wear a full girdle. She can't lift anything over 10 pounds without risking herniation, and states that no surgeon will operate on her abdomen again due to the lack of skin and the risk of a fatal septic infection. And she struggled with infection while she was hospitalized. She lives with constant pain and has PTSD, and she describes feeling horrible with no confidence at all in her abdomen and a constant need to look over her shoulder. Erica was probably the prosecution's most important witness.
Hello, Erica.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Okay.
Erica, I want to start off by asking, how have the actions done by the defendant on June 1st, 2024 affected you?
I have lack of nutrition. I usually am always weak. I have a lot of scars, a lot of pain.
Yes. Erica, what are we looking at here?
That is my left hand. In between my middle finger and index finger, you will see small little dots in between the 2 knuckles. Those.
Now let me stop you there. Are they?
Well, there's bullet fragments right there, and as well in between the hand.
So
Like,
it's this right here,
yes.
and this little dot right here.
Yes, and then that one as well. That as well, and then in between the 2 middle fingers, that little white line that's in between, those are bullet fragments as well.
Thank you. Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm tendering to defense State's Exhibit 54 for inspection and any objection.
Objection, Judge.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. So, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 54. Can you please explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what we're looking at here?
That is my right foot. It's a complete break.
Is that where it's circled there?
Yes.
So that's the complete break you're speaking of?
Yes. And I have rods, screws, and I have a plate.
So you have and where is this plate and rods and screws currently today?
Still in my foot. I will be unable to remove them. I have to keep them on like forever.
Why is that?
Because that piece right there that is broken,
This piece?
yes, does not heal. So the screws and rods and metal keep my foot together.
Has that affected your mobility in any way?
Yes, I am able to walk. I cannot wear certain shoes. My foot always is swollen. It's always in pain.
Change emotionally. How has this affected your mental state?
I've never had anxiety. I never felt depression. And it's just an absolute horrible feeling. PTSD is even worse. You lose sometimes time. You're just sitting there and you're just thinking, and it's playing over and over in your head. And you're trying to get out of it and you can't. And you just sit there. It's kind of like if you feel numb and you're trying to wake up from it and you can't.
The defense put up Billy Boy himself, and he testified that his daughter was having a problem with someone related to Erica, and that individual was doing things with the little girl that one should not do and that are criminal. Instead of calling the police or going after the person who he believed was harming his child, he decided he needed to visit violence upon Erica. He admitted the shooting, but then stated that he blacked out. Now, you might wonder what the defense was. Was it that he didn't do it? Was it somebody behind the tree? No, it was self defense. And he said he had to do that because someone was harming his child. But the person harming his child was not Erica. Now, here's why I say the case was unfair, but unfair really to the prosecution. The general rule in jury instructions is that if there is evidence supporting an instruction, then the court is required to give that instruction. There was minimal evidence of a need for self defense during Billy's testimony during the trial. But under cross examination, he had to admit that he had blacked out, that he didn't remember anything about the shooting. But investigators who tried to follow up on his complaints about the person supposedly harming Emmy could not verify them, and they did extensive interviews with the young lady. The prosecution did an excellent job of explaining this during their rebuttal closing argument. But in order to understand this rebuttal closing argument, you have to see how the defense presented this to the jury.
So what are the issues at hand? State seems to believe that it's just an aggravated assault with serious bodily injury. As you see in your jury instructions, you're going to see that it says when the issue of the application of defense to a third person is raised, which it has in this case, the burden of persuasion is on the prosecution to disprove the justification beyond a reasonable doubt. If you have a reasonable doubt as to whether the defendant's conduct was justified by the defense of a third person, you must find the defendant not guilty. Okay? So they're going to try to disprove defense of a third person by argument. Okay? Argument. They didn't put up any evidence up there to say that there was not a defense of a third person. They failed. So it's just not those things that he showed up there. Check, check, check. He forgot to check this one. Okay? He didn't check this one because they failed to do it. They could have called Uncle Louie, come up here. Did you do it? No. Disproved. Okay? Of our defense. It had to be immediate. It had to be an immediate threat. That's why he didn't wait till Sunday. If you want to take care of it now. Okay? If it wasn't immediate, he would wait till Sunday. If he wanted to ambush her and kill her, he would have waited till Sunday. She was going to come over. Okay? It didn't flow that way. It doesn't flow right. Right? In his brain. And how does his brain get in this position? Would we be here, first of all? If he wasn't abused all these years? Would we be here? Probably not. Okay? So remember how he's been shaped over these years. He threw a weight at him. They hit him several times. She told you she's been arrested for beating up her own brother. And her words are laying hands on somebody. Okay, she got arrested. Okay, Billy says that she's got friends in high places. Nothing happened to her. You know, we talked about second chances. How many chances does she have? Her brother, Billy, several times. She admitted to drinking with her kids in the back seat. One of her kids. That's a felony offense here in Texas. Anything happen? Okay. Keeps going over and over in his mind. That's what he's thinking. Okay. And it's in the instructions what a reasonable person is. Okay. It tells you at that moment what he's thinking. And it's just not that moment. It's everything that pushed it to that moment. Okay. The abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse, the physical abuse, it shaped him. okay? I can't get any help, okay? Because of her friends. Nothing's going to happen. He's had enough. Now something's happened to his daughter, so he's got to act. And he acted.
And here is how the prosecution responded to that argument.
And I want to bring your attention, if you could all grab your jury charge, please, and let's turn to page 5. You look at that top line, it says, under the justification, because this is what they're arguing. He's saying that they have a justification. If you look at that top line, under the circumstances, as the actor reasonably believes them to be, and pay attention to that word, reasonably believes. The actor would be justified in using force to protect himself against the unlawful force he reasonably believes to be threatening the third person he seeks to protect. Now, reasonably believes. To reasonably believe, you must be able to use what? Reason. You must be able to reason with what you're doing. Yet, when he took the stand, and I asked him about shooting Erica, I blacked out. When I asked him about shooting her multiple times, do you remember? I don't remember. I can't remember. He conveniently blacked out. He conveniently doesn't remember. He remembers being in the apartment, and then he remembers the cops showing up. So where was he able to formulate this supposed reasonably believe? Where was he able to use his reason when he's conveniently blacking out throughout this entire process that he can't recall? Ladies and gentlemen, it's an excuse. This is a lie. Another lie by the defendant. Just another excuse to justify his actions of what he did to Erica that day.
The key issues in self-defense are always an imminent, deadly threat. In other words, a threat that can produce great bodily harm or death and which requires immediate action to prevent that harm from occurring. And when we're talking about defense of others, the person who has to be in immediate harm, and the action has to be taken against the person who is causing that immediate harm. The judge made a mistake in allowing the jury instruction on defense of others. I understand why he did it, probably to avoid an appeal issue. But there was not any evidence of an immediate threat. There was no immediacy whatsoever because the person who was allegedly harming Emmy was nowhere near the scene where Erica Torres was shot. And the action wasn't taken against the person who was allegedly harming the child so that he would stop harming the child. Rather, it was taken against Erica Torres, who was not the person harming the child. Fortunately, it did not take the jury very long to reach the correct result.
Okay, members of the jury, we received notice you have a verdict. Is that correct? Could I have the presiding juror stand momentarily? Is that verdict unanimous, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could you hand it to the bailiff for me and you can be seated? Could I have defendant and counsel rise? State of Texas versus Billy Delgado. We, the jury, find the defendant, Billy Delgado, guilty of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury with a deadly weapon to a family member. Felony of the first degree, signed by the presiding juror. You wish to have them polled?
Yes, sir.
Do they know their numbers or not? Do they know their numbers? Okay, could I have the list, jury list? Thank you. Okay, when I call your last name, ladies and gentlemen, the question is whether that is your verdict and you join in that verdict. If you do, say yes. If you don't for any reason, please say no.
Now, Texas is very much like Missouri in that in some felony cases, they will allow the jury to actually sentence the defendant. All the judge does is essentially act as a clerk to record the sentence. He doesn't get to use any judicial discretion. And sometimes, in Missouri, they allow the defendant to essentially ask for this. There is some thought that in certain instances where there's significant mitigation, a jury will go much more leniently than a judge will. But in this case, there was a lot of victim impact testimony. Testimony that couldn't get in during the evidential phase of the trial was brought in as victim impact statements for the jury to listen to. And not only did the state get to put those witnesses on, like Erica Torres, but also Billy Bob got to put his witnesses on, and that included his mother, who said, I'm going to lose my grandchild and I'm going to lose my son if you send him to prison. And my initial thought on that is, well, he should have thought of that before he pulled the trigger, but he didn't. So here is what the jury came back with.
Cause number 2025 CRG 000717D2, the state of Texas versus Billy Delgado. We assess his punishment at confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for a term of 50 years. No fine assessed. Do you wish to have him pulled?
Yes, sir.
A 3-day trial is really something to see. This is a good prosecutorial team here who was able to get this done in 3 days. And the sentence certainly spoke volumes about the severity of the crime and the severity of the damage done to Erica Torres. He received 50 years in state prison. That's what I have for you. That's what I have for you today. I hope you found it helpful, interesting, or maybe both. If there's a subject you'd like me to discuss, please feel free to send me an email at the address above. If you like what we do, please feel free to subscribe and come on back to the beach tomorrow. I release videos every weekday, weather and work permitting. If you have the opportunity today, do a kindness for your fellow man. It makes the world a better place, one kind act at a time. And now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine that you might like.